My name is Claire Morgan, and I was 28 the Christmas Eve. Everything cracked open. I stood at my grandmother's long oak table, glass of champagne in my hand, and smiled across the candles at her. "Grandma Evelyn, thank you again for the $500 you sent last month," I said. "It really helped with the roof." She set her fork down like it suddenly weighed 100 pounds. Her blue eyes sharpened on my face. "500?" she repeated, voice soft but razor thin. "Claire, the transfer I sent you was $200,000. The room froze. My little brother, Ryan, stopped mid-chew, his mouth still full of mashed potatoes. My dad, Mark, cut off his joke halfway through. My mom, Julia, stared at Grandma like she'd misread a number. All the blood drained from my face. My hands shook as I dug my phone from my pocket, right there between the turkey and the cranberry sauce. I opened my banking app, heart pounding so hard I could barely see the screen. One deposit, $500. Memo line, "Love you, Grandma." That was it. $199,500. Gone. Evelyn's eyes swept slowly around the table, landing on each of us in turn. "Money doesn't just vanish," she said. "Somebody in this room knows exactly where it went. You never forget the moment you realize the people you eat Christmas dinner with might also be the people who would rob you blind." Conversations died. The only sound was the ticking clock over the fridge. 2 months earlier, I thought my worst problem was a leaking roof. Late October in Colorado Springs had come in ugly and wet. I was scraping by as a freelance graphic designer, living alone in the small, crooked house my parents had signed over to me after college. Peeling paint, drafty windows, 2 bedrooms, and a patchy yard, but it was paid off, and it was mine. Then the first heavy snowstorm hit. I woke up to a sick, dripping sound inside the walls. By noon, half my living room was a shallow lake, and the hardwood floor I'd spent a year refinishing had buckled and split. The roofing company's foreman walked the sagging porch, shook his head, and handed me an estimate that made my stomach twist. $18,000, due before they'd lift a hammer. I had $4,000 in savings. That was it. For weeks after the storm, I tried everything. I picked up extra design gigs, applied for new credit cards, even sat in a banker's office while she politely explained that, yes, my house was technically an asset, but not one they were excited to lend against. Meanwhile, the damage was getting worse. Black mold crept up the drywall like bruises spreading in slow motion. The air smelled sour. I started waking up with headaches and nosebleeds. One night in early November, I finally called the one person in our family who still had real money because of a lottery ticket she'd bought for fun years ago. My grandmother, Evelyn. My voice shook while I described the roof, the water, the estimate. I hated asking for help, hated how small it made me feel. She listened quietly, then let out that soft, satisfied laugh she used whenever she'd already decided something. "Claire, you don't beg family for help," she said. "You let family help you. I was going to wait until Christmas, but you need it now. I'll send enough to fix the roof and give you breathing room." She repeated back my Zelle info, every number perfect, then promised she'd handle it. I thanked her so many times I lost count, then hung up feeling both saved and ashamed. 2 days later, in the middle of a client Zoom call, my phone buzzed with a bank notification. I muted my mic, opened the app, and heart pounding. One deposit, $500. Memo, "Love you, Grandma." I stared at the screen, waiting for a second line to appear. It didn't. $500 was generous, but nowhere near fix-your-life money. I told myself she must have changed her mind, or decided to bring the larger gift in person like she'd done before with thick envelopes at Christmas. Pride snapped its jaws shut around my doubts. I texted a simple, "Thank you so much," and never mentioned the amount. I threw everything I had at the problem instead. I added my savings, maxed out 2 credit cards, and signed the contract with the roofers. For 6 weeks, I lived on frozen dinners and cheap coffee, listening to hammers and nail guns as they tore off the old roof while snow kept falling. By Thanksgiving, I had a brand new roof and almost no money. I kept telling myself the rest would sort itself out eventually. I didn't know Grandma had already sent $200,000. I didn't know nearly all of it had been siphoned away before it ever touched my account. So when I thanked her for the $500 on Christmas Eve, and she said, "Claire, it was $200,000, my world tilted. I held up my phone like it might defend me. "This is all I received," I said. "Look, one deposit." She didn't even glance at the screen. Her gaze moved from my face to my parents, then to my brother. "Mark," she said to my dad, "Julia, Ryan, before I call anyone, I'm going to ask you once. Is there something I should know?" No one answered. My dad swallowed hard. My mom stared at her lap. Ryan's thumbs hovered over his phone, frozen. Then Grandma reached for her own phone. "I'm calling the police," she said. "Tonight." On Christmas Eve, she put the call on the speaker. The dispatcher's calm voice filled the room as Evelyn explained that $200,000 had gone missing between her bank and mine, and that everyone who could possibly have touched the transfer was sitting at her table. 15 minutes later, red and blue lights flashed across the snow outside her windows. 2 officers stepped into the warm house, boots leaving wet prints on her polished floor, and started taking statements. They separated us into different rooms like suspects. By the time they left, the Christmas lights still glowed, the fire still crackled, but the warmth was gone. In its place was a new, ugly question hanging in the air. Who in this family had stolen everything? The day after Christmas, the snow outside looked softer than the people in Evelyn's dining room. The detective came back in plain clothes, set a folder and a laptop on the table, and got straight to it. "The transfer left Miss Morgan's account is clean," he said. $200,000, gone in one shot. Within 3 seconds, it was diverted through a dummy account, split, then pushed offshore. The trail stops in the Cayman Islands. He tapped the laptop. "This wasn't random. Someone on the receiving side set up a forwarding rule. That means whoever did this had access to your login or your device, Claire." My mind went straight to my laptop. Who had touched it since November? Only one person over and over. Ryan. His computer is updating. His Wi-Fi is down. His sudden interest in my design software for a side project. I'd handed him my laptop half a dozen times and never thought twice. He was my little brother. Across the table, my parents kept trading tiny, guilty looks. Evelyn noticed. "Mark, Julia," she said quietly. "What are you saying?" Dad rubbed the back of his neck. Mom stared into her coffee. "Ryan's been gambling," Dad finally said. "Sports betting. He told us he owed around $40,000. We helped him a few times, small amounts. We thought if we kept it quiet, he'd stop." The detective just nodded. "Debt gives a motive," he said. "We still need method and proof." For the next few weeks, his words about access to the receiving device kept me awake more than the cold did. Every time I followed the logic, it circled back to the same place, Ryan's apartment. In mid-January, on a weekday morning when I knew he'd be at work, I drove there. I still had the spare key he'd given me for emergencies. My hands shook as I unlocked the door. The apartment was a mess of dishes, laundry, game controllers, but I went straight for the small desk. His laptop sat there, closed. No password, of course. The desktop was a sea of icons, but one file grabbed me, a spreadsheet titled Season Tracker. Columns of teams, bets, wins, losses, and amounts owed filled the screen. At the bottom, in angry red numbers, the total stared back at me, $198,000. My stomach flipped, but I kept going. Buried inside a folder labeled old_code was a small file named forward_rule.py. I opened it. Simple script, a few lines of logic. Near the top, my exact bank-linked email address labeled as a trigger. Below it, instructions that if an incoming transfer matched Grandma Evelyn's bank and amount, $199,500, would be shaved off and sent to an account tagged Cayman. Beside the key line in Ryan's sloppy shorthand was a comment. "Test W/small AMT first. Grandma always does that." The $500. The test. He'd practiced on me before the big transfer ever hit. I took photos of everything, the spreadsheet, the script, the account string, and emailed them to the detective from Ryan's own Wi-Fi so the IP and timestamp would trace back here. His reply came minutes later. "This is enough for a warrant. Don't confront him." I closed the laptop exactly how I'd found it, locked the door, and walked out into the icy parking lot. I wasn't wondering if my brother had done it anymore. I was wondering how much more of my family I was about to lose by proving it. The warrant came through fast. The detective coordinated everything and told me only one thing: stay calm, tell the truth, let us handle the rest. I didn't stay calm, but I did tell the truth. At the end of January, I texted my family, "Meet at Ryan's place tonight at 7, no excuses." Grandma replied, "I'll be there within a minute." My parents tried to call, but I let it ring. Ryan didn't answer at all. When they arrived, the apartment looked like a normal couch, coffee table, TV glowing softly. I'd already connected my phone to his TV. No small talk, no hugs, I just hit play. First slide, the betting spreadsheet. Red numbers, debts climbing to nearly $200,000. Second slide, the old underscore code folder. Third, the script itself. Ryan's comments, my email as the trigger, the line that sliced $199,500 away, the instant Grandma's transfer hit my account. Nobody breathed. Ryan's legs gave out. He slipped down the wall to the carpet, hands over his face. Mom made a broken sound I'd never heard before. Dad stared at the screen like he'd aged 10 years. "I did it," Ryan said finally, the voice wrecked. "I was in too deep. They were going to come after me. I thought if I could win big, I'd put it all back before anyone noticed. Claire makes good money. She'd be okay." He looked at me then, eyes shining with panic, guilt, something twisted. "I was going to fix it, I swear." I felt weirdly calm, like my emotions had frozen solid. "You watched me max cards and live on frozen dinners," I said. "You let me thank Grandma for the $500 while you hid the rest." Mom reached for him. "We should have forced him into rehab or something. I shook my head. "I'm not here for explanations. I'm here to say I'm done." I turned to my parents. "You protected him. You knew about the gambling. You kept me in the dark while he stole what was meant for me." Grandma Evelyn hasn't spoken yet. When I looked at her, her eyes were bone cold on Ryan. Behind us, the front door opened. The detective stepped in with 3 officers and a folder. He read the charges: wire fraud, theft by deception, identity theft, and they cuffed Ryan in the middle of his living room. Mom sobbed. Dad looked hollow. I walked out before they finished reading him his rights. The next months blurred into federal agents, statements, and hearings. Because the money had crossed state lines and gone offshore, the FBI took over. They traced enough of the trail to prove what Ryan had done, but almost none of the money came back. Less than $4,000 was recoverable. The rest was gone into digital sand. Ryan took a plea: 7 years in federal prison, with restitution he'll never realistically pay. I didn't go to the sentencing. I'd already seen everything I needed to. My parents' marriage didn't survive the fallout. The arguments never stopped. Every conversation turned into a courtroom. Who enabled what? Who lied? Who should have spoken up years earlier? By June, they were divorced, and the house I grew up in was sold. I didn't ask where either of them went. In July, Evelyn called me over. She looked smaller, but her voice was steady. She slid a folder across the table. Inside was her new will. "Everything that's left comes to you," she said. "Around $9 million after taxes and the charity trusts. Mark and Julia are out. Ryan is out. You're the only one I trust not to let money ruin you or anyone else." I told her I didn't do any of this for an inheritance. She smiled faintly. "I know exactly why you did it, Claire. That's why you're the only one who gets anything." She asked one thing: that I keep visiting. I promised I would, and I did. I sold my little house, paid off every debt, moved to a coastal city where no one knew my last name, and opened a small design studio that answers only to me. I changed my number. Ryan's letters from prison go unopened into the trash. My parents' messages never reach me. For 4 more years, I called Evelyn every Sunday and spent a week with her every fall. She died one October morning with my hand in hers, exactly the way she wanted. Sometimes I still wake up thinking about Christmas Eve, the moment I thanked my grandmother for $500, while my brother sat 3 feet away knowing he'd stolen the rest. Greed didn't just take $200,000. It took my parents, my brother, our holidays, the version of family I thought I had. But it also gave me something brutal and clean. A life where love isn't an obligation I owe to people who hurt me. Sometimes the worst betrayal is the only thing that finally sets you free.